Tucker Carlson just released an interview with Mother Agapia, the sister of news anchor George Stephanopoulos, and she is, quote, a nun from Palestine. In this interview, Mother Agapia does her best to paint a picture of the growing persecution of Christians in Israel, as Tucker nods along. But the story that comes out over the course of this interview actually paints a very different picture. And as we watch and dissect, we really quickly realize that there's something much darker going on here than meets the eye. In case you're unaware, we are Christians living in Mother Agapia's Palestine, or Judea and Samaria, and we have over a decade of real-world experience on this topic. So let's get into it.
The reason I'm asking these questions, well, first, I think it's worth worrying about Christians who are the minority population. Well, it's worth worrying about Christians in general, but the United States is a majority Christian country that pays for a huge percentage of the Israeli economy, and it has the support of so many Christians in the United States, and I don't know if they're fully aware how the Christians are doing. And I keep reading that the Christian population in the region has declined dramatically since Israel became a state in 1948.
Right.
And I'm not quite sure why.
Well, again, I think it has to do because the whole issue is that Israel has continued to grow and think that they can dominate the Christian areas, the areas of Palestine.
As the interview goes on, Mother Agapia makes claim after claim about how terrible it is to be a Christian living in, quote, Palestine. And while the theme of the conversation is the vilification of Israel and the case for an independent Palestinian state, the opposite, in fact, occurs. Tucker and Mother Agapia make an overwhelmingly convincing argument for full Israeli sovereignty in Judea and Samaria, what most people call the West Bank. Check this out.
So there's two different things. If you live in Israel, you're a citizen. And so they can live there and work, but there's sort of some petty grievances that people might have. But if you're a Christian in Palestine, which is where most of the activities of the life of Christ are, Bethlehem, Jerusalem, and they're treated with the effects of the occupation. A Christian who lives in Bethlehem cannot go to Jerusalem, to the Holy Sepulchre, without a permit.
A Christian can't.
No, without permission from Israel.
There are two startling admissions here. First, despite Tucker's attempt to paint the idea that there's a unique Christian persecution going on in Israel, Agapia says that Christians and Muslims are treated the same. Secondly, she says Christians who live in Israel that are Israeli citizens live fine. Christians who live in quote-unquote Palestine do not. Also, she adds the idea that Palestinian Christians can't freely cross the border between Israeli and Palestinian territory, something Tucker seems to find disturbing. But what she fails to mention is this. Israel is a sovereign nation, but Palestinians have claimed to want a separate nation of their own. Israel and the Palestinians laid the foundation for this back in the 1990s when they agreed to the Oslo Accords. Palestinians were given self-rule in major Palestinian areas, and to enforce nationhood, Israel set up border fencing and checkpoints. If Palestinians want to travel out of their areas of self-rule into the sovereign territory of Israel, they have to cross a border checkpoint and get a permit, just like you would at nearly any other border crossing in the world. The fix for this is not a Palestinian state like Mother Agapia is stumping for. If Israel created a full Palestinian state, these borders would get even more solidified and difficult to cross. The real fix is Israel applying sovereignty to Judea and Samaria. Then Mother Agapia and her friends could become Israeli citizens and travel anywhere they want because there would be no border. They could also join the ever-growing ranks of hundreds of thousands of Israeli Christians who live and thrive in Israel with full freedoms and rights, just like anybody else. But she goes on.
We are closed off in Bethany from going to our convent in Jerusalem because of the wall that was built. It wasn't done for security to build that wall. It was done simply to expand the borders of Israel. The wall was built right beyond Lazarus's tomb. Our school is walking distance from Lazarus's tomb, from where Martha and Mary lived, and they built the wall right above where the tomb is.
She spends a lot of time here vilifying this wall that Israel built. What she fails to mention is, like we just said a minute ago, this wall is in fact a border wall separating Palestine, as she would say, from the rest of Israel, like the Palestinians wanted and still claim to want. She claims here in this interview. Israel built the wall because of the Second Intifada, where Israel suffered over 20 suicide bombings in just 1 year. In 2003, just after the first major sections were completed, suicide bombings dropped to just 4 per year and have steadily declined from there. If you're interested in more on this topic, we actually did a show on this recently, which I can link down in the description. But again, the only real fix for this difficult situation is not for Israel to declare a Palestinian state, which would make things more separated, but to declare sovereignty. But there's more.
What does a yellow license plate mean?
Yellow plate is for people who live in the state of Israel, and they can go on certain roads, all roads, and for Palestinians who have a Jerusalem ID are allowed to have a car with a yellow plate. So there's very much an apartheid system. Very much so.
Again, she fails to mention here that the reason there are different color license plates is because of the Oslo Accords, the attempt to give Palestinians self-government. There are a lot of Palestinians who need to travel between different status zones, and the Israeli police need an easy way to tell who is who, basically who printed your passport. If she doesn't like this, then the fix would be Israeli sovereignty, nothing else.
I'll just be totally blunt with you. Most Americans are aware that there's a system, something like what you just described.
Right.
But the pretext for it, the justification for it, is that there's a lot of Islamic terrorism. There are a couple intifadas. There are a lot of suicide bombings. And it's Islamic terror. And most Americans have been taught for 25 years that Islamic terror is a threat. And, there's some truth in that, of course. But so we assume that Christians would be getting an exemption from all this. Why punish the Christians for Islamic terror?
Because I don't think it's Islamic terror that's taking place in the first place. I think we have to disabuse ourselves of that notion.
Again, Tucker is mischaracterizing the situation, and Mother Agapia is nodding along. The license plates have nothing to do with Islamic terror. They were created to give Palestinians self-rule, autonomy, like they wanted, like Mother Agapia claims to want in this interview. If the Palestinians don't like it, Israel should apply sovereignty. Because guess what? In Israel, Muslims, Christians, Druze, you name it, they all drive yellow license plates, Israeli license plates, because they are Israeli. They all vote, they all serve in the IDF, they all practice full open religious freedom. But that freedom does not exist in Mother Agapia's Palestine. Listen to this.
When you first got there 30 years ago, were there more Christians than there are now?
There were more. I mean, it still has been a relatively small population, in the tens of thousands, I think, in Palestine overall. But it's certainly, I think, the greater degree, and little by little, it's decreased. But it's really getting frightening now, because I think these last 2 years is sort of like almost pushed people over the edge.
This is a clever choice of words, because what she fails to admit is the Christian population in Israel is steadily going up. It's only shrinking in Judea and Samaria, or quote-unquote Palestine, for Christians living under full Palestinian self-rule, meaning this has nothing to do with Israel and everything to do with Palestinian leadership, which is something that she will not say. Except for kids throwing Molotov cocktails.
Well, if you're raising your child and there's no job opportunities for them, and quite frankly, there's a good likelihood that if you're a teenage boy, that you could get shot. I know a number of kids in Al-Azariya, where I was, 14, 15-year-olds who have been shot. And look at the difference in that.
For what?
Supposedly throwing a Molotov cocktail. And now think about when the war started with Ukraine and Russia. I remember a story in the New York Times. It was a huge story celebrating that a beer factory was now generating Molotov cocktails to throw against the Russians. And that was celebrated. In Palestine, hundreds of teenage boys have been killed because Israel will say they were throwing a Molotov cocktail.
Can you believe it? In Ukraine, people celebrate kids throwing Molotov cocktails. In Palestine, they get shot. What, you think Russians wouldn't shoot a teenager throwing a bomb at soldiers? I'm not even really sure what this is supposed to mean. She says Christians are getting scared to live in Judea and Samaria because their boys are getting shot, throwing bombs at people. Like, what on earth? That's the best example of persecution that you could drum up. If you put an explosive in a bottle, then light that bottle on fire and throw it at people, you could get shot. You probably should get shot. Teenagers should not be allowed to light random people on fire. I'm sorry, call me crazy. If that makes you nervous, knowing that your 17-year-old boy could get shot for lighting someone on fire, then yeah, maybe you should move to somewhere else. Also, maybe you should examine your faith as a Christian as well. And this exposes where her sympathies actually lie, even to the point where she doesn't hesitate to say this about Hamas.
Hamas are people who have had their homes taken from them, who, if they live in Gaza, have not been able, basically been in an open-air prison for certainly the last 20 years going on. Even when the Israelis withdrew from Gaza, they didn't leave open borders.
Israel gave the Palestinians Gaza in 2005 on a silver platter. Then the Gazans voted in Hamas. Israel then blockaded the Gaza Strip because of Hamas's goals to turn Gaza into a staging ground for warfare against the state of Israel, not the other way around, like she says. And despite the supposed blockade, the warfare against the state of Israel has progressed quite well. We could go on and on with the lies and deceit presented in this interview, but the fact is, the situation for real Christians in Judea and Samaria, or Palestine as she would call it, is really rough. They are intimidated, arrested, tortured, and even killed, not by Israel, but by jihadist Muslims. We here at the Israel Guys are Christians who live in the quote-unquote West Bank in an Israeli community, and we enjoy perfect freedom. We know secret Palestinian believers, though, who have to live their faith undercover, not even telling their own children about their faith because they would be tortured and killed if they did. This is because they live under Palestinian rule. In Israel, under Israeli rule, they wouldn't think twice about it. The only Christians who are allowed to live unmolested under Palestinian rule are people like Mother Agapia, people who praise jihadists throwing bombs at Israelis, condemn the state of Israel as the source of all their woes, and defend Hamas as victims. This means the only real way to improve the lives of Palestinians living in Judea and Samaria is for Israel to apply sovereignty, freeing them from the corrupt oppression they live under, aka Hamas, and the Palestinian Authority. That is the only real path forward for either Palestinian Muslims and also real Christians as well. And in this interview, I don't think it was the point of the interview, but Tucker and Mother Agapia seem to have exposed that quite well. Guys, before I go, bringing you accurate information about what is happening in Israel and the Middle East like we do in these videos isn't easy or cheap. Up until now, we have relied on working with advertising partners, companies we believe in, to support the channel. Here in the near future, though, we will be ending that program completely. And we would like to ask that if you find value in this channel and the information we are bringing to the world every single week, please consider joining our team in producing these videos by supporting us monthly. If you're able to do this, we have a special access Telegram group with behind-the-scenes content, updates on our volunteer work in Israel, special store discounts, prayer requests, and more specifically for our monthly donor team. If you would like to join us, you can go to theisraelguys.com/donate or click the link in the description below. As always, thanks for watching.